I think Vaha begins. Is that right?
Yes, but just for as an introduction,
Okay.
2 minutes of speech.
Okay. Não, é Varra. Professor Varra ouviu do fundo. May I begin, people?
Okay.
May I begin?
Now we start.
Yes. Okay. Let's go.
Okay. All right.
All right. Good morning.
Hello, everyone.
May I?
Welcome to the first International Forum. This forum is led by the Postgraduate Office of the University of São Paulo with the support of the Fulbright Commission and the Institute of Biology from the University of Brasilia. As universities, we cannot control or predict the level of government-imposed lockdowns, domestic travel and transportation restrictions, national border crossing barriers, or even non-immigrant visa issues for students and researchers. However, as universities, we are able to exercise control and establish good practices in areas for which they have traditional assumed responsibilities. Teaching and mentoring, integrity of academic processes such as testing and assessments, access to the information, the ability to conduct research and prove theories in the labs, and sharing of knowledge with a broad community. By sharing various perspectives about the successes we have had and the challenges we have overcome as well, we can learn from other universities in Brazil and abroad. During these forums, we will be presented with several institutional plans for moving abroad and moving ahead. For this first forum, we have well-known guests from Brazil and abroad, led by the Chancellor of University of Texas System, Professor James Milligan, the Vice President and Associate Provost for Internationalization, Professor Michael Peipinger from the University of Notre Dame, Chancellor Evilásio Francisco Borges Teixeira from the Pontifical Catholic University from Rio Grande do Sul, and myself as the president of the University of São Paulo. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Vahan. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jaime Santana, Director of the Institute of Biology of the University of Brasília, and I will conduct this forum. We thank USP, the Fulbright Commission, and the Institute of Biology of the University of Brasília, and those behind this initiative for the organization of this forum. We will have 4 points of view from our 5 invited speakers. You can ask your questions online, and after all 5 speakers have spoken, we will have plenty of time for your questions and comments. Our first speaker is Professor Millikan. Professor Millikan is a national leader of public higher education with more than 30 years of experience and has acted as Chancellor of the University of Texas System since September 2018. This is one of the largest public university systems in the United States with more than 240,000 students and more than 100,000 healthcare professionals, researchers, faculty, and support staff. Before joining the UT system, Millikan served in top leadership positions at major university systems in 3 states: the City University of New York, the University of Nebraska, and the University of North Carolina. In those positions, he led efforts that advanced economic development, online education, global engagement, and student access and success, all areas of interest to the Brazilian situation. Professor Millikan is one old friend of Brazil, having participated in CAP's strategic planning seminars before the launch of the PRINT program, and is a member of USP International Advisory Board for the PRINT program. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and sharing your experience with us. Dr. Michael Kippinger was appointed Vice President and Associate Provost for International Education at the University of Notre Dame since 2016. The University of Notre Dame. Okay, Connie is telling me that it's better Millikan speaks first, and then we will introduce the other speakers. Millikan, you have 15 minutes, please. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this important discussion. I only regret that I couldn't be with you in Sao Paulo, where I have spent much time over the past decade or so working with colleagues there. And it's a pleasure to join all of you today. We're going to talk a little bit about the change in higher education that COVID has presented us with, both this spring and as we look forward. And I hope to share with you some of the experiences of the University of Texas system. You heard how large the system is. We have 8 academic institutions, of which the University of Texas at Austin is the largest. And we have 6 health science centers. So it's a diversity of institutions. I'm going to talk today primarily about the academic institutions, the 8 of them. So on March 17, we made the decision and the announcement to change all of our classes across our 8 institutions to online, and to not allow students to return from their spring break unless they had no other accommodations that were suitable. So we did have some students living on campus during that period, the spring semester. So the experiment mostly worked. Those students who were enrolled continued to persist, and those who were on track to graduate, graduated. There were a number of challenges, significant financial losses during this period, but it is, I think, the most remarkable feat in the 30 years that I've been in higher education. We started with 20% or fewer of our faculty that had taught online, and 40% of our students that had taken at least one course online. But this spring we had 100% in both groups, teaching and learning online. We continued this summer with entirely online instruction, and each of our 8 campuses has experienced an increase in enrollment this summer over last summer. So there have been some challenges in addition to financial and the operational challenges because many of our faculty did not have experience using the online platforms, using online educational resources, and just generally with online pedagogy. And also, we face, as I believe you also do, and probably most of our colleagues around the world face, some kind of digital divide where not all students have equal access to broadband or the hardware that they need to participate fully in the educational experience. So going forward, that's clearly an area in terms of equity and the broad reach of remote education that we are going to need to address. So thinking about this fall and moving forward, in some places this has been described as a debate between health and safety on one side and economic viability on the other. I would say that misses the most important point. The most important point is the mission that we have in providing education to, in the case of the University of Texas, 240,000 students. These students are the future of Texas. We exist to provide them with the educational opportunity that they are entitled to. And we know from research that many students were rethinking their intentions about returning, enrolling in the fall if we were 100% online. We know that those students who pause in pursuit of their education are most often underrepresented or first-generation students who may also be the least likely to be successful in completing in a timely way. So we believe that it was incumbent upon us to do everything we could to provide the broadest educational experience in the fall and do it in a way that is safe and healthy for our students, faculty, our staff, and our visitors. So we've been working for a number of months now with the presidents of each of our constituent institutions and their faculty and their administrative leadership on plans for opening in the fall. And yesterday, the Board of Regents of the University of Texas system approved our recommendation to open in late August in the fall for in-person classes, online classes, and hybrid classes, by which meaning some delivered partially online and partially in person. Now, there is some variation among our 8 institutions, depending on their location, the prevalence of the COVID-19, on their size and the percentage of their students who live on campus as opposed to living at home, their research enterprise, and other other factors. But there are a number of common elements. One, we will open in late August. And two, we will close at the Thanksgiving holiday in late November. And any additional instruction will be online after that. Second, we will adhere to all national, chiefly the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines, as well as state and local public health guidelines. We will have very open and frequent communication with all of our stakeholders, and we will be resilient, flexible, and adaptable in the fall. That is the key to our success, being able to scale back our operations, our physical in-person operations at any point, or even close them down, as we demonstrated that we could do in the spring. And there is a significant increase as we speak in Texas in the number of COVID-19 cases, including in Austin, where I am today. And so I think that with understandable anxiety among students and faculty and staff and parents and families of students, we have to be able to demonstrate that we are taking all the precautions recommended, all the good practices referred to, and that we are able to change quickly when we need to. So the specific elements of the plans will be familiar to you, and I won't spend a lot of time going through the detail, but I will highlight a few of the kinds of things that I know you're thinking about as well. So first, there will be a limited return of the workforce. Those who do not need to be on campus will be encouraged to work from home. Those who do come, their arrivals and departures will be staggered so that we can limit the number of people on campus and in our facilities. We'll have significantly extended hours in all of our academic buildings so that we can reduce density at any one time and control the pedestrian flow. We will require mask wearing at all of our institutions in any facilities and encourage it outdoors. We will require social distancing in classrooms, laboratories, and all facilities. Each institution will have a protocol for testing and for isolation and contact tracing. There are significantly increased cleaning and disinfecting regimens. There will be signage on the campuses and in buildings to control pedestrian flow. There will be physical barriers erected in buildings and in classrooms and offices, primarily plexiglass walls. There are new restrictions on our housing density and our dining facilities, limiting the number of visitors to campuses, limiting the number and the size of gatherings. Something very important at some of our institutions, regulating athletic practices and events and spectators. And importantly, preparing for mental and emotional health issues, those on our campus communities. So there, as I mentioned, a variation of approaches among our institutions, but all following those same general guidelines and practices. I will tell you that one of our institutions has announced that every single course will be offered both online and in person. And every student and every faculty member will have the option of being on campus or being a remote participant. Another of our institutions has developed a spectrum of 7 different types of course offerings, from 100% online, which will be minimal, to 100% asynchronous remote, and then 5 in the middle, hybrid offerings, different degrees of remote and in-person, depending on laboratory and practicum requirements and other factors. One of our largest institutions, just to give an example of the level of flexibility, about a month ago was planning on having roughly 2/3 of the instructional experience be in person with all the appropriate distancing and masking and barriers, and 1/3 remote. And recently, because of our experiences in Texas, and as we learn more, that approach is flipped. And so now it'll be about 1/3 physical delivery and 2/3 online. So the most important thing, again, that I'll say is the need to be flexible and adaptable and nimble in this experience. We know that we can do it because we did it last spring, that we can scale back and shut down when we need to, and we need to be able to continually monitor this. Now, I do want to say a couple things that I think are positive at the end of the day. Are there silver linings to this? I think there are. First of all, in the area of remote work, where almost all of our workforce worked from home, we've advanced far from where we were before in terms of being able to manage that workforce. Second, educational attainment in Texas is not where it should be, and the state's population is projected to double over the next 30 years. So we were going to be challenged with how to provide education to this vastly increased number of Texans in a traditional model. Well, in my going to help us significantly as we plan for the future for increasing educational participation in Texas. On a related note, healthcare, not where it should be, and with an increased population, going to be difficult to provide it. We are among the lowest doctors per capita in Texas in the country. So how do we deal with the growth and the increasing needs for healthcare? Well, telemedicine has advanced tremendously during this period. We went from a handful of telemedicine visits to hundreds of thousands in the last few months. And that's, I think, going to prepare us well for the future also. So I'm going to stop there, and I have the pleasure of introducing my colleague from the University of Texas, Dean Sharon Wood, who is a structural engineer by training, a professor and dean at the Cockrell School of Engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. And I'm hoping Sharon will not directly contradict any of the things I've said, but will be able to reinforce them with some specific examples that she has found at this very large and complex School of Engineering.
So thank you very much. As JB mentioned, my name is Sharon Wood. I'm Dean of the Cockrell School of Engineering. And I would like to share a few examples with you of things that we've done over the past couple months to try to address this change and what the new normal is. So in the past 3 years, we opened a brand new building that made a huge change to our community. It allowed all of our students to gather together. And as a result, we've had record changes in retention and also in graduation rates. But obviously, we can't do this now. We have to practice social distancing, and we want to find a way where we don't have large reductions in our students' performance. One of the reasons we think that we were able to get the students so excited is because we were able to have many more project-based learning experiences. We have a large maker studio. We've incorporated hands-on projects in over 60 of the classes we offer in engineering, and the students work in teams. And so what's challenging us right now is how do we come up with projects the students can work on while they are still practicing best social distancing? So I'm going to just share two examples with you of how our faculty have been incredibly creative in developing ways that the students can have these experiential laboratory experiences while still be in engagements while they're still socially distanced. The first is a class on embedded systems. And we started this as a massively open online course in the spring of 2014. And what made this course unique was that all the students who participated bought a hardware kit that Texas Instruments produced. And so they were able to do experiments using various levels of complexity with this. And then they also developed an online teaching assistant. So the students would do a problem, they would then plug their unit into their computer, and it would be tested automatically to see if they've successfully solved the problem. So we're planning to send expanded kits like this, plus also a USB oscilloscope to all of our new electrical engineering students for the fall, so that they will have the opportunity to do laboratory experiments, even if they're doing them from their dorm room or from their home. The other thing that we did this year, which I thought was very creative, was, as the chancellor mentioned, we had about 2 weeks to shut down the entire university. So in the introductory electrical environmental engineering class, one of the faculty members sent water sampling kits to all the students. So they were able to test pH, water quality, bacteria testing. And they were all charged with going out into their local communities to test the water and then develop, they would share the results and develop reports. So they all gave oral reports over Zoom, where they got to share their results and talk about what was interesting and why there were differences. The students absolutely loved this experience. And they asked if they could somehow increase the number of people who were participating. So if there was some way that we could get the environmental engineers in Brazil who are interested in sharing this experience with us, it would be a tremendous advantage. I think one of the challenges that we did face, and the chancellor mentioned this, was that most of our faculty had never done online teaching before this semester. And so they were suddenly faced with all these different software packages that they had to get used to and how they interacted. And overall, I was thrilled with the way things went. I think the biggest challenge that we faced was on doing the quizzes and final exams. A lot of this had to do with the students not having appropriate internet connectivity. The proctoring, automatic proctoring, was not necessarily where we needed it to be. And I think we are going to have to really think carefully about the types of exams we're giving our students moving forward. But in summary, I was really pleased with the creativity of our faculty and with the tenacity of our students, because they really excelled during this very challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wood, for your excellent talk. Thank you also, Dr. Millikan, for your excellent talk. We move next to Pippinger, is that right? Dr. Michael Pippinger was appointed Vice President and Associate Provost for Internationalization at the University of Notre Dame. Since 1960, the University of Notre Dame is one of the America's leading undergraduate teaching institutions, as well as being at the forefront in research in areas such as astrophysics, radiation chemistry, environmental science, tropical disease transmissions, peace studies, cancer, robotics, and nanoelectronics. Dr. Pippinger has extensive experience in undergraduate global education and research, having also worked at Columbia University in New York and New York University. Welcome, Dr. Pippinger, and thank you. Activate your microphone, Dr. Pippinger, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I'd like to begin by thanking the Fulbright Foundation for hosting this event. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues from our Brazilian partner institutions and from the University of Texas system to being a part of this panel today. I am pleased and proud to represent the University of Notre Dame, and I send my greetings of our president, Father John Jenkins, who was unable to be here today. We are very proud and pleased to be a part of this conversation, in part because of our longstanding relationship with Brazil and the many contacts that we have in country there. And I hope to talk about some of those in my brief remarks. I wanted to begin by telling you a little bit more about the University of Notre Dame. For those that may not be familiar with us, we are much smaller than the University of Texas system, of course. We are 12,000 students strong, approximately 8,000 undergraduate, 4,000 graduate. We have a variety of different colleges and schools on campus: business, law, the College of Science, the College of Arts and Letters, architecture, engineering, and then we have our newest school, the first that's been opened in more than 100 years, our Keough School of Global Affairs. Our expertise is in some of the research areas that were already mentioned in the introduction, but we're also primarily known as well for our commitment to undergraduate education and also for our Catholic identity and unique history. We too are driven by mission and vision, and that's certainly something that I will come back to time and time again in my remarks. One of our areas of particular focus over the past decade has been thinking about how we can be the great global Catholic university of the 21st century and continue to expand the reputation and excellence that we have domestically here in the United States worldwide. And to that end, we have developed a number of important educational hubs for us, which we call global gateways and global centers. They're in strategic places for us based on our history and identity and research interests. We have gateways in Jerusalem, Rome, London, Dublin, and Beijing. And then smaller sites, which we call global centers, which are growing in places such as Sao Paulo, as well as Santiago and Mexico City, as well as Hong Kong and Mumbai. One of the things I want to encourage us to think about in our conversation after everyone's remarks on the panel is this question of how are our universities affected globally, our global footprint, because of the pandemic. On the one hand, that may seem like a very straightforward question, and another way, it's a very difficult one. And I hope we can come back to that. I want to talk about where we, the University of Notre Dame, has been in this process of responding to the COVID-19 crisis, and then talk about where we are right now and where we're going in the future in the time that I have. We made the decision, much like the University of Texas in the middle of our spring break, in the middle of March, that it was time to bring both students who had been studying abroad home and to suspend on-campus classes. That occurred in a short time span, and we had about 5 days to bring everyone home from around the world. We had over 550 faculty, students, and staff that we repatriated from those global gateways and centers around the world back to either campus or to their home locations in the middle of March, at the same time that we were suspending classes here. We told our students not to return from spring break. Their belongings were still here in many cases, and we would immediately pivot to online education, which we did, thanks to a number of colleagues who are focused in digital learning and thinking innovatively about the curriculum. And that pivot actually went quite well. We've just been in the process of reviewing our evaluations across the different colleges and schools I mentioned earlier, and the feedback from our students was very positive, in the sense that given the short amount of time we had to reinvent as faculty members our curriculum, we were able to do that in a way that was able to deliver the content of the classes successfully in the middle of the crisis. As we were shut down physically here on campus during the second half of the spring semester, what's our spring semester here, we began to wrestle with the difficult question about what we would do moving forward into both our summer sessions and then most importantly, of course, into the fall semester. We did that discernment, that discerning work in a variety of ways, both internally and externally to the university. Internally, we gathered senior leaders, faculty members, gathered together in a variety of continuity and emergency committees to ascertain what would be possible in light of the changing dynamics and landscape of the virus and how it was affecting both higher education and our country more generally. While we were doing that internal questioning, can we open? How would we reopen? How would we live in community together? How would we be able to provide the hallmark residential experience for our undergraduates or the intimate lab settings and seminar settings of our graduate school? How would we be able to do that? We were also speaking with outside experts on the public health dimension of this crisis. And that's important because while we have our own Institute for Global Health, Global Public Health, which focuses on vector-borne diseases and does a lot of work both in the Latin American region as well as the Southern Hemisphere worldwide. We were consulting them about what was going on, but we were also consulting outside experts from the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and from Johns Hopkins, getting the best kind of information about what we knew at the time about the virus, coupled with our own strategizing about what we thought was possible for our community to be able to mount in the fall, made our president, Father Jenkins, make an announcement on May 18th that we would be coming back in the fall. At the time that he made that announcement, it was quite startling to the wider higher education community. I think because we were one of the first large universities to make this commitment to come back in person in the fall. There are still plenty of U.S. universities who are wrestling with how to come back and whether they should come back in person or in a hybrid model or remain remote. And there's no one right answer, obviously. But for the University of Notre Dame, based on our values and the North Stars that we follow, the notion that by being in close community, that by being in formation, that by understanding how we all have a responsibility to care for the academic community, the intellectual community that we create, we made the decision that we would come back. And we have spent the time from that announcement in May to now working to make everything operational for when our fall semester starts, which for us will be over a month early. Students, international students, will begin arriving on August 1st. Domestic students will be arriving on August 3rd, and classes will start August 10th. We'll go straight through to our Thanksgiving holiday at the end of November without any break, and we'll expect students and faculty to remain on campus in one community, and then we will break at the end of November and see where we're at. As you can imagine, to operationalize that decision about coming back in the fall, we needed every single day, every single hour, every single minute since that announcement was made on May 18th, and we've been using each one of those days to plan for the fall. I want to pivot now to talk about what that looks like. Because there are still so many unanswered questions, both about the virus and about people's ability to adhere to what we understand to be best practices in terms of fighting the disease right now. The university has spent a lot of time imagining a full-scale publicity and media campaign for our own community called Here at ND, where we are going to re-educate our entire community about what this will look like for 12,000 people to be back on campus, all learning together. And that is everything from what you've heard my colleagues say about wearing masks, more frequent hand washing, but also things about how you move about campus, how you give that social distancing space, how you're able to get in and out of buildings, in and out of laboratories. We've changed our academic calendar. We've changed the actual calendar of any given day, in that classes will be slightly longer, and the time it takes to get from class will be longer as well to ensure proper social distancing. We do have the option of both faculty and students asking for a special accommodation to be able to either teach remotely or learn remotely, but we're doing everything we can to physically transform the campus so that we can be in community together learning in person. That means everything from new plexiglass shields to reconfiguring classrooms to upgrading technology in certain kinds of classrooms, to putting up the signage on the campaign. We believe that this has to be a concerted group effort for us as a community. I want to talk about the challenges that we will face in the fall when we come back, especially from the global education lens. I think this is very important for us to consider, especially because we're a binational panel talking today about the challenges of responding to COVID. One of the things that has been hardest for us to reckon with and reconcile with is that we have the Notre Dame family. Our students, our faculty and staff are scattered literally around the world right now because of the mobility challenges that come from bans on travel due to the virus, coupled with political pronouncements in terms of presidential proclamations about who can and can't enter the United States at this point in time, coupled with WHO warnings, CDC warnings, the fact that the US embassies and consulates are not granting visas at the moment. This is a tremendous loss to us and makes it hard for us to be in full formation, because we recognize that we will have some international students who may not be able to come to campus. And then the question becomes, what kind of delivery of courses are we able to offer those students? But a whole series of additional questions comes out of that. Do we want first-year students who have never experienced the University of Notre Dame, or who have never experienced U.S. education even, to have their first experience be online? Is that the same as being in a classroom with faculty members, or in a residence hall with their dorm mates, or on a playing field? These are questions that we've had to wrestle with, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But in terms of what are the challenges, when you think about that, we will not be a full community necessarily because of the pandemic. So too, we'll have new challenges with how we respond to our faculty research. Faculty research is inherently global, and we have hundreds of faculty members that are working with colleagues, partners, stakeholders around the world. How do we continue as a university to support those international research projects when we have a travel ban and our faculty are not able to travel right now? What does it mean in terms of the financial crisis that was created from our response to the pandemic? How do we assure that the funds are still there for those kinds of large-scale research projects? So too, we have to think as well, finally, about the relationships that we have with our partner universities, whether they're USP or anyone else. What does it look like for us to continue to be in good communication and good formation around the world? Different countries where we operate are dealing with the pandemic in different ways, which allow for both an ease of some relationships to continue, and conversely, more complicated relationships as a result. And we as a university are looking right now, what does it mean globally for us to reopen laboratories here in South Bend? And if we don't do that, what happens to those partnerships and relationships? The last thing I'll say in terms of future challenges that we have, and I hope our panelists from Brazil will talk about this in their remarks, or that we can talk about it in the discussion section. One of the other consequences of the pandemic for higher education in the US, at least, has been a reckoning about social injustice and about inequality in our society. We know statistically that the virus and the pandemic have affected communities of color at a much higher rate, have affected communities with lower incomes at a much higher rate. What does that do for our research? What does that do for the kinds of issues that we pivot to looking at and examining and responding to as the University of Notre Dame, being a force for good in the world? And how do we continue to develop those kinds of conversations about the after effects of the pandemic on the wider population, especially those most vulnerable among us? And how does the university do all of that work on top of running the university in the day-to-day way that we've been talking about? These are the challenges that we face. They're exciting challenges. I think they provide a lot of opportunities. They're certainly daunting, but I think at the end of the day, as long as we adhere to our mission and vision, and at the same time be agile and flexible about seizing opportunities to move forward into the pandemic and through it, I think that will serve the University of Notre Dame well and serve all of us in the community of higher education institutions. So thank you for the time, and I'll turn it now over to my colleagues from Brazil.
Thank you, Professor, for this excellent talk. Thank you very, very much. And I would like to tell you that we have more than 700 people worldwide following us. Thank you all for joining us. Next speaker is Brother Teixeira. Brother Teixeira is the inventor of the digital Catholic University. This is one of the most important private institutions in Brazil, and primarily known for its work in medicine and technology. Its brain institute is known worldwide. Brother Teixeira works in theology, philosophy, looking at religion, education, spirituality, and people and their interaction with the university. Welcome, Brother Teixeira, and we are sure you can give us some unique insights in these difficult times. Please, Professor Teixeira.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Greetings to all my colleagues, and greetings to all the people who are following this meeting on the internet. I remember that when I was a child, I learned by my mother that to think, account, and prayer you can do in your mother language. And definitely English is not my mother language. So my apologies about that. Anyway, I'll do my best. And also I'd like to say thanks for the invitation to participate of this meeting. It's really an honor, and I appreciate. My purpose is share to my colleagues a short reflection about this situation in 3 topics. Before the COVID, the actions of our university are doing during this period, and after COVID. Please, if it's possible, to avail my presentation. Olha,
Noah, muito.
meu Jesus, isso aí tu já tinha visto bem antes. Que não tem, ó.
It's okay. It's okay. Take your time.
Professor, please, you have my presentation?
I do not.
No?
No, I do not. I'm sorry. But you can
So-
try. Go
No,
on.
no,
We can wait a little bit.
Don't worry, I can just speak.
Okay. Okay.
Take time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Por que não aparece na câmera?
But everything is saying you also.
Okay, so let's start. Perhaps our institutions have many common problems, and this situation can be an opportunity. A word that you heard a lot, challenges. All of our institutions are speaking about challenges. But challenges can be also an opportunity, an evolution. And the evolution of any organization requires it to overcome a series of challenges. That is our situation right now. By overcoming them, it will ensure this efficiency, maintain its competitive edge, innovate, and identify new paths without missing its purpose and mission. However, in my opinion, no matter no precise and perfect explaining strategies. There are uncontrollable variables that may completely change the scenario. That's our situation. As the maximum says, when we think we have all the answer, life comes and changes all the questions. It's look like this is the situation we are going through as we face the coronavirus pandemic. But in the other hand, the current challenges imposed cannot be isolated or decontextualized from the moment that each organization was going through immediately before the pandemic began. In the context of Brazil, for example, there is no doubt that the current moment has brought even greater obstacles in the face of a scenario which, for some time, was filled with threats and difficulties, such as 2 points. One, the Brazilian economy kept melting down even after the 2018 presidential elections. As a consequence, in Brazil, the GDP grew only 1.1% in 2019. Second one, the politically unstable scenario had a negative impact on the measures that could potentially mitigate the country's economy and social problems. An emblematic example of this complex scenario. The pandemic has forced most institutions, especially private ones, to move to online teaching. But once we get through this, we have some questions like, what will be the structure of higher education? Will distance learning as it is now continue? Or will there be hybrid models? About our context, the pandemic has posed the need for quick, flexible, and dynamic solutions. We cannot anticipate any future developments on the disease in the middle of the economic crisis, but because of that, we have established plans to fight it and build alternative solutions. Some actions we are doing in our university. The first, we create and establishment of a COVID committee involving different departments to address the most diverse aspects of the crisis. Is one successful action spearheaded by the university. In a few days, PUCI, hundreds of staff members started working from home, and most teaching went remote. We have also two tough rules placed during the pandemic encompasses a number of responsibilities. First, ability to respond and provide support to the university community, staff, faculties, students. And second, several actors in our society, like government, companies, several civil society. In our university, also some remarkable points that you are doing. Undergraduate and graduate programs moved to online instructions. For example, mobilization and engagement of teams, use of new teaching and interactive tools, commitment to maintain student motivation and participation. Two, minimization of financial impacts of the continuity of studies, flexibility of negotiation policies. Three, assistance and support to the community. And four, science and research as fundamental tools to beat the crisis. In our university, during this period, more than 50 professionals and researchers at PUCI, including faculty from the School of Medicine, School of Health and Life Sciences, School of Humanities, School of Technology, Brain Institute, Science and Technological Park, and São Lucas Hospital have joined forces. Perhaps our organization, when we speak about uh, two words are very important, in my opinion, right now. Maybe more than the past, to rethink and to revisit how they work. This involves putting objectives, plans, and strategies into perspective. It involves thinking about how their purpose can be pursued in a new scenario. This scenario brings new elements on different fronts. And my third point after COVID, back to the new normal. I think the post-normal times, there's three characteristics. Will not be predictable, will not be controlled or managed. So the alternative will be to go online. In my point, to be able to go online, we will need to detect novelties and a sweeping changes. Now we can see a volatile scenario, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But a complex problem cannot be addressed in a linear fashion. Then the challenge will be, just to conclude my speech, 4 points. One, we, we have to think up solutions that also include some degree of uncertainty, as my colleague said before. Second, to have the ability to recognize what is hidden behind the problem. Third, to develop adaptive thinking. And last but not least, to create viable options for the future. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Brother Teixeira, for your very nice talk. Thank you. And we move on the next speaker is Professor Vaham Agopian. He is president of the University of São Paulo since 1918. USP is the largest and arguably most important university in Brazil. This meeting was stimulated through USP postgraduate office in the person of Professor Carlos Carlotti and the Pascoal Sinis Chair in the person of Professor Abílio Afonso Baeta Neves, former president of CAPES. Through recognizing that we are passing through a unique situation, and as such, we have to learn through each other how to reach a new normal in higher education, research, and teaching in our universities. Professor Agopian is a civil engineer with doctorate in King's College, London. Please, Dr. Vaham.
Thank you very much, Jaime. And once again, hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure now as a speaker and to share with you the experience of University of São Paulo, and at the same time to point out some ideas that I have about the future, the post-COVID-19 pandemic. Well, the first 4 presentations have been very much inspired and will help us to stimulate a good discussion. I'm sure that a lot of questions that I have already to put on the table, but I'm trying to avoid to repeat the same topics and change a little bit the approach of this presentation. I'm sorry, Carlotti and Abílio, then later you can complain with me. But I think it will be useful not to repeat the same ideas because all of the main universities in the world are behaving a very similar approach. Of course, University of São Paulo took a series of measures which will reflect in the future we are denominating the new normal. Let's say more than 90% of the lectures are provided remotely, and we decided to keep the same procedure for the next semester. The students and faculties now have the flavor of using new tools for the classes. In our case, at USP, we call e-disciplinas. It is a platform based on the Moodle. They know by practice now how efficient the use of this support is to improve the classes. As a research university, we believe that the interaction between faculty and student is compulsory. in order to provide teaching in a research environment. However, the classes can be improved, and we manage already to do so with this is the new normal. The same thing happened with the research in a very short period of time, 2 weeks. More than 200 research groups at USP managed to divert or to start research projects related to COVID-19. They are multidisciplinary groups from all of areas of knowledge, not restricted to the health sectors. Moreover, they manage to provide society with proper results. That's very tricky. The behavior of the researchers changed, and they understood that good research work could be translated to the society immediately. I have to mention that we have more than 20 labs who join efforts to provide testing of the population. Now they are developing new test methods to test our community. Moreover, joint efforts of different background researchers are necessary to fulfill the needs of population. This is another approach for the research. The research has changed. We change. As a supervisor, our tasks have been modified. New behavior in our labs. So that is the situation at University of São Paulo. Of course, Professor Peipinger mentioned that we have social inequalities, and we have the same problem at the university. We are a public university. A large proportion of our students, they came from public schools, so their families cannot afford to keep them at universities easily, and we had to provide internet facilities. We had to provide with some tools. In our case, these social problems are stronger, and the support of our students is one of our major tasks. But let's talk about the near future. Let's talk about the major challenges for the university to answer the society demands at the day after that we are calling a new common, a new order, new normal. Let's start with the teaching activities again, the lectures. As a research university, I insist we support strongly the close relationship among the students and faculties. But during the pandemic, it has been proved that the modern tools help a lot the teaching efficiency. Why not make them always available to the students? Remote classes can help students who fail in some subject, or even if they miss a class in a specific subject. These tools are strong media to help students to be prepared beforehand for the lectures and to revise the content of the lecture afterwards. My friends, we cannot return to the past. Actually, now we do have a way to revert this new situation. We do not have a way to revert this new situation. The students may complain about remote classes, but they know how can get profit of them. This is a difficult situation because the faculties have to change the way to prepare their lectures, and the administration has to provide information support and also infrastructure for this purpose. let's say, classrooms, internet access, and so on. So the new normal will be different of the past normal. It's a major challenge. It's a major situation. There is someone is with the microphone on. But let's to discuss the research work. This will need a complete adjustment as new background has been shaped. Initially, the behavior of the university will change. Now we are competitive due to internal and external factors. In order to promote a common scientific agenda, it is imperative that the collaboration becomes to be overarching mindset, overactive mindset, changing from competitiveness to collaboration. This forum is one of way of collaboration. So we are sharing our experience to help our colleagues. But we have to deal with a major problem. The support for science is not uniform across the world. Many policymakers view science as providing them with political problems of balancing public health and the economy. The Brazilians can understand very well what I'm saying. Given the many restrictions dictated by epidemiological models and public health recommendations, we are suffering for this policymakers' thinking. The narrowness point of view, policymakers and scientific funders tend to support applied research with a clear link to the improvements of daily lives. This is a very narrow point of view that we have to fight against. And last but not least, the distinction between science for a purpose, applied science, and science for discovery, the fundamental science, may be actively harming the cause of science writ large. In my point of view, the division between these fields is artificial. Nevertheless, it is certainly reinforced by policymakers and the general public, who tend to prefer the applied science, as there is a link, direct link actually, between research and the betterment or understanding of their lives. We, as a scientist, as a researcher, we have to prove that there is no applied research without the basic one. It's a very difficult task because the public cannot understand well what we are saying. Well, finally, I'm going to return a topic that once again my Professor Peipinger and Professor Milliken have pointed out, the internationalization. It is very clear for me that it's utmost importance to provide the teaching in an international environment. For me, that is essential in order to prepare the future professional as a competitive and competent one in a global world. We are living in a global world. Moreover, for an institution like USP, the internationalization is a very efficient tool for quality assurance. As a rector of the university, for me, it's very very comfortable when I realized that one department or research group has a good agreement with a very well-known institution abroad, and they are working together. In my point of view, the international agreement starts with the joint research project, and the mobility of students and mobility of faculties are a consequence of the good research project, of the success of the good research project. But as was mentioned, how to support international activities with this limitation of mobility? Well, we are giving a good example. Now we are in an international meeting in different countries. We are in different places. The audience is divided in different places. Everyone at your own place. This is a good example. But how we can, that's to say, to widespread this example to the for the international research groups or for the international training of our students? How we can get international environment without or with less mobility in the next few years? That's another major challenge. And I'm sure that we, with our capability of innovation and creativity and capability of new ideas, we'll be able to provide our students, to provide our researchers strong links, strong international links, and in a different world. This is once again the new normal that we are going to cope in the next future. But let's say I don't want to take your time. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope that we can keep this type of activities in order to improve our universities for this new normal. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Professor, for the excellent talk. We have almost 1,000 people online now from all over the world. We also have over 100 questions. It will be difficult to answer all here, so we have choose a few for each speaker, and the rest we will try to answer in a later time. Let's begin with a question to Dr. Millikan. Sorry. Let's begin with a question to Dr. Millikan. What do you see as the major positive outcome of this pandemic?
Well, thank you. And thanks to all my colleagues for their very good comments.
And you can go on any question if you want, okay?
Yeah, no, I'll respond to this one. Again, thank you to all my colleagues. I do think, and I mentioned this briefly, I do think there are some silver linings or positive things to come out of this pandemic. I mean, one is the global collaboration and cooperation that should help us with future pandemics. But related to higher education in particular, I believe that we have not done an adequate job in the past of preparing faculty and students for the effective use of educational technology, online educational resources, the kinds of technological advances that can help us in very effective hybrid teaching, at least, both in person, supported by appropriate technological tools. As I said before, I think we have accelerated greatly the pace of change because of COVID-19, maybe 5 years acceleration. So now 100% of our faculty have had some exposure and 100% of our students. I think this will be enormously important to us in the future. As somebody mentioned, we won't go back to the past. I believe that's true. I believe we will think about the work that we do on campus differently than we did in the past. But also, I think that now that all institutions have had this exposure and this experience, the pursuit of the highest quality education delivered remotely is going to continue, I believe, unabated across all institutions. And so we have great opportunity for those seeking traditional degrees. And given what we know now about the future of work and how dramatically it is changing with artificial intelligence and robotics and other developments, it's going to be important that we provide reskilling and re-education opportunities throughout people's careers. And this proficiency in online education, I think, will help us get to that point much more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question goes to Dr. Woods. A recent opinion article in Inside Higher Education argues that there is an unacceptable risk in reopening on-campus instruction before there is a COVID vaccine available and before more effective treatments are in place. How your university dealing with this liability?
Yeah, we just issued our guidelines yesterday, and we're very concerned about the risk of having students and faculty in the classroom. We will be starting with having extreme social distancing. So everyone will have to wear a mask, and we will be occupying the classrooms at 40% of their capacity or less. And the largest classes will be completely online. But what we're hoping to do is, as we understand better what's happening on campus, we can shift so we can have more people in a class or less people in a class to change as the pandemic changes. So we are trying to utilize best practices on social distancing to maintain some in-person experience for the students, but that may change if things get worse here.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Dr. Varham, the pandemic opened the university to share information with the public. Will this continue post-pandemic?
Oh, yes, I'm sure it will continue because the large universities before the pandemic are very much concerned with the relationship with the society. I can mention that the major universities are very much interested and very much concerned to increase their third mission. The third mission, which we call as an interaction research university and society. And the pandemic was an opportunity to prove to the society that we can be a part of the solution, and we can help the society to go ahead with some crisis and to survive and to improve the quality of life thanks to our discovery and mainly for the students we are preparing. So I'm sure that this close link among universities and people will be stable and will be even stronger in the near future.
Thank you, Dr. Varham. Dr. Pippinger, do you see a classical return to classroom teaching after COVID-19? What has changed forever?
Thank you for the question. I think I do see a return to the classroom with classical teaching, but I see what's changed forever is that the content of that curriculum and the delivery may have been changed. So I'll give you an example. We have within our curriculum, in our School of Architecture, students spend their third year of a 5-year architecture program in Rome on site doing work in situ throughout the city of Rome and in our architectural studios. When they had to come back to campus, some of that work improbably moved to an online format. One of the benefits of moving to an online format is that curriculum can change and can give people a different perspective and a different access, not just for those students, but for a wider cross section of students as well. And we found this throughout the spring that in a number of our classes, when faculty innovated and invented how they would move that curriculum online, they went to resources and they went to additional documents that they might not have done if they'd been together in person. That transforms the discussion. It transforms how students do research. It reforms how faculty teach. So when I think about what's different when we come back to traditional learning, if we come back to traditional learning in that kind of a way, it's that faculty feel empowered to use more creative resources in and online technologies, as my colleagues from Texas have said, and that also people are craving that. I see that as a positive difference coming out of the pandemic.
Thank you. Brother Teixeira. Thank you, Brother Teixeira. How much resistance is there to online teaching? How can we alleviate that resistance?
Thank you. Good question. I think in this scenario, 4 points is very interesting, and in the future will be changed. For example, the world of work will not be the same again. And as university, you have to learn our interaction with the society and the work world. Another thing is people consumption habits will not be the same again. And 3 and 4, 2 points important. The way of our learning in our universities at the present start change also. For example, demand of digital services will increase, and the line between the online and offline will disappear. We have to learn, maybe do this, and to create more different methodologies, not only online, not only presential learning, but maybe in my experience here in our university, we try to build a middle way, a hybrid, I think. This period, for example, you just are finishing our first semester, and it's true, our students, they are very tired because you shut down the second week of March and all the classes, disciplines, and it's by online remote classes. I believe that we have to build the same, presential and online. In the resistance, we have to wait if the scenario change or not, We are prepared to the next semester will start in August to try to start little by little, depends of the scenario.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Teixeira. Professor Varron, how does USP see its international collaboration flourish with limitations of COVID-19? Please activate your microphone, please. Dr. Varron, activate your microphone, please.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a very difficult question, but I'll try to summarize in a few words. First of all, we are still keeping all of our agreements, and we are encouraging our research groups to go ahead with joint research activities. But of course, we understand that it will be not possible for the Brazilian faculty to move to abroad to do a part of research and vice versa. So we have to divide the research work in parts, and we have to learn how to develop this research in different labs and join in the final results. The same thing with the students. We can we can have our students staying in São Paulo doing the research, but a part of the research can be done abroad by one colleague who is doing their doctoral degree in that university. And the same thing, he or she can help a foreign colleague to do part of the research in São Paulo. So we have to find out new ways for the near future to fulfill this need, this internationalization that we believe is a very important for our students, for our faculties, very important for the university.
Thank you, Dr. Varron. I think we must improve a lot our online contact with other universities. This is true. Next question is to Dr. Millikan. How are laboratory experiments being carried out at this time at your university?
So, thank you. One of the first things that we restarted late in the spring was research activities, which we had pretty much completely closed down, both for addressing the concerns of the pandemic, but also because we were shifting resources to research projects relating to COVID, which across the University of Texas now we have over 130 of these research initiatives relating to vaccines, treatments, technology. But we needed to, of course, we have an enormous research mission across the system and a lot of successful research projects. So we needed to come up with a way to restart the operations. So each institution established a set of protocols involving the distancing requirements within laboratories, only that work that had to be done on site in the laboratory be done there, and then write-ups and other work that could be done remotely be done remotely. I think this has been successful across the university system. It may be that my colleague, Dean Wood, would be better equipped to respond really with some granularity about how it's working in the engineering college at UT.
So we have limited the number of students who are allowed to come to campus. Each lab can only occupy at 30 to 40% capacity. And while this was successful in the beginning to allow us to keep critical research going, it has proven to be difficult because students have deadlines, projects have deadlines. And so we are hopeful that we will be able to start having a rotation basis. So one cohort of students could work for a week, and then another cohort of students could come in for another week. I think the biggest concern was just limiting the number of people who are physically in the building and trying to see if we could do the testing and do the monitoring and make sure that we can maintain social distancing practices.
Thank you. Dr. Vahan, do you think industry and governments will invest more in the new normal? Please activate your microphone, Dr. Vahan. I'm sorry,
Jaime, could you please repeat the question?
Yes, my microphone is very noisy, I'm sorry. Do you think industry and governments will invest more in the new normal to put more money at the universities in the new normal?
You mean to get more money for research at university from the
research,
industry?
Administration, teaching, not only research.
Well, the industry and the government, of course, they have some different approaches. For the industry, of course, the main point is to get the research, to support the research and to get to use results of the research. But during the pandemic, we had a very new approach. We are receiving grants just to go and to do the research without any return. So this is very important. We have some funds, and in the large industries, large companies are giving grants, are giving donations for the research purpose, just for the research sake, without any return. At the same time, something very important is happening, Jaime. I'm very glad that people are helping university with to support the research done at the university. That's fantastic. We have nowadays almost 3,000 persons who gave money for the research at the university. But for the let's talk about the large approach of the research. I'm not very confident that we are going to get more money for the industry and for the government to carry on the university. I'm sure that we have to find new ways for support university, for support the university needs in the near future.
Thank you, Vahan. And the last question is for you all. And during your answers, please do your final considerations. The question is, I'm sorry, I will begin again because my microphone was away. This is the last question. The last question is for you all. Please, during your answers, do your last considerations. The question is, can online education and the new normal improve international academic relationships? We begin with Mr. Millikan, please.
Thank you. So I think there are two kind of factors at work here at cross purposes. The first is that we're having to do this conference across continents because we can't travel and be together in the same place. So that's certainly a drawback, and will certainly, to the extent that these conditions continue, impede international collaboration. But I believe that, and it was referred to earlier by my colleagues, the fact that we're doing this now with participants from two continents speaking, and an audience from around the world, I think will only increase the capability of doing this, what we're learning about how well we can work together. Again, I think has accelerated that pace of change in this area. And that, together with the new kinds of technological tools that will allow us to work together more easily, I think at the end of the day, that's another of the silver linings here, that we will see much more frequent conversations like this, and research and educational opportunities with the use of technology and connecting the academic community globally.
Thank you, Professor. We move to Dr. Pippinger, please.
Thank you for the question. I too think that this is very much a mixed bag. I think that one of the true benefits, as Professor Milliken has already mentioned, is that we're able to connect with old colleagues, old friends, and make new friends in the scholarly world through panels like this. And we actually, because of how the pandemic has changed our understanding of work and understanding of time, we're able to do that. And that benefits us, our institutions, and the relationships that we have. And that bodes well for research. It bodes well for imagining what kinds of new investigations we can partake in together in the future. That said, there is a real casualty to it. And I think about that often. We have 14 undergraduates who would be starting from Brazil who right now are unable to come to the US. And I think about the fact that no matter how excellent our faculty is in teaching online, and no matter how excited those students are about taking their classes, that does not replace being in the university community physically in 3 dimensions. And that's something that's a challenge. And when I think about Fulbright's mission about mutual understanding and educational exchange, certainly the exchange part is very key. We were to send Notre Dame students this summer again to our partner at FGV, and that too was put on hold. There's something that's missing in the pandemic that I hope we can return to and will return to in the future.
Thank you. Professor Wood, please.
So I agree that the physical and 3-dimensional exchanges are extremely important. But I think what we've learned from the pandemic is that we can continue to engage with our contacts virtually. And I think too often we felt we could only have those detailed conversations when we were physically present. So I think this has opened up the opportunity for us to continue to build relationships and to foster those relationships when we're not able to meet physically.
Thank you. Dr. Vahan, please.
I agree with Professor Milliken. In fact, the online communication make the international connections more intensive. For instance, last year I had 3 international meetings with the others, rectors and presidents, and now I am having about 2 per week. So it will be easier now to talk each other, to change expertise, to change ideas with my colleagues. But at the same time, the online communication, online linkings are not links are not enough for our activities. So I think that in the new normal, we are going to use more online communication, online teaching, but we cannot give away the, let's say, personal communication and personal meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move ahead. Professor Teixeira, please. Please, Professor Teixeira, activate your microphone.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think you have a very interesting opportunity to build and to continue to work together, because the pandemic is an opportunity also to make strong cooperation. And the role of the university is very interesting. For example, during this period, the role of university and the research around the world doing by the universities is very, very important. But this is not just a shift of paradigms in terms of teaching modality. Maybe there's two things is important work together. How can we guarantee in the face of a remote learning model the levels of excellence in research, service and involvement with the local, regional, and international community? As Professor Hood said, you have to continue engaging in looking for the best solution for the society. I don't believe that the universities have all the solution for the society, but you have to make strong dialogue. And our question is very important. Try answer together as universities. How can we still be an institution that promotes innovation and development to help and to support the society and their problems?
Thank you, Professor Teixeira. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the excellent insights from all our speakers, especially those from abroad. We hope our audience have enjoyed the discussion, and thank you very much for your participation. Our next forum is already in the works. Please join us then or contact us if you think it's necessary. Good afternoon to all and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.